guys, welcome to Silver Sound Guitar. I'm Mark.
I'm John.
Today we are going to be talking about pentatonic scales and their usage.
Indeed.
So pentatonic scales. When was the first time that you played this as a student, not a teacher?
Okay, so that's actually kind of a weird story. I didn't learn my pentatonic scales until way late. So this is a little bit weird because it's one of the things like most guitar players learn right off the bat, right?
What?
Yeah, right? So, okay. Yeah,
Okay.
So it's like, I mean, if you think about your playing experience, let me flip that around. When did you start with your pentatonic scales?
When did I care about them, or when did I start with them?
When did you start with them?
You know, it was something that I was always forced to do because scales, right? Like, you need to understand sounds and you need to understand how they relate to learning how to play music. So for me, it was especially since I started with classical guitar, actually, that was, it was pretty early on.
Okay, yeah. So for me, I learned all my major scales. I learned the cage system first, all of that. 12 keys, whole 9 yards, before I really knew my pentatonic shapes. And part of that was too is like I realized I could just drop 2 notes and now I've got a pentatonic scale. So I didn't learn them. And in fact, early on with teaching, I didn't even teach them out the gate. Because in my head it was like
this is like I'm learning new stuff, guys.
So because you can drop those 2 notes and then you've got your pentatonic scale. And and so for me in my head I could, if you have the major scale, you can kind of construct it. And not only that, I do think the major scale offers a whole bunch of extra stuff that the pentatonic scale just doesn't offer you in terms of those extra 2 notes and what that can mean. If you're looking at the minor, that 2, and that 6, like it changes everything, right? And you get those Dorian notes.
This is too wild. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Let's pull back a little bit.
Right.
So from a learning perspective, why do you think that this is important?
Now, see, and that's the thing. I think there's a lot of things about the pentatonic scale that make it super easy to learn. Mm-hmm. So even though this is where I started in terms of my teaching journey and saying like, it's got to be the major scale, like now I've kind of come around to this, you know what? You want to play guitar?
Yeah.
The pentatonic scale is where to start. And I think that's partly because of the instrument itself and like how it's lined up. Right?
Yeah.
And so you think
I
about...
definitely see that.
Yeah, you think about how easy it is to use these patterns with just 2 fingers. Right?
Yeah.
So if you were going to play it,
let's do this. Let's do
this. Yeah,
so... Let's switch to talking about what are the notes in a pentatonic scale. If you want to go ahead and kind of show those and talk about what they are in reference to, let's just do a major.
Okay, so in relation to a major pentatonic scale, so if we're looking at a major pentatonic scale, I'm going to start kind of here in the middle. Most people learn this like A minor pentatonic shape, and so starting right here, I'd have that C, right? So I'd have that C, D, E.
Also,
G.
Don't be confused. Normally it would be the top of your guitar, but this is a 7-string.
Yeah, so forgive the 7-string. So we got G, A, and then C again. Okay, so essentially what that is, if we're to number those scale degrees in relation to a major scale, right? That's what you're asking.
That's what I'm asking.
Okay, we've got the 1, the 2, the 3. We're skipping the 4, playing the 5 right there, and then we're playing the 6, skipping the 7, and then back to 1. And then if we just keep that going.
So we're doing 2 octaves, right?
Right.
Which they call, there's a fancy word that you learn. What is that called?
For 2 octaves?
Yeah.
I don't know, 2 octaves?
Isn't it like, what? When you go through a progression and it involves the entire thing, isn't it diatonic?
Oh, okay, yeah. So, I mean, diatonic having to do with, all the notes in a particular scale.
Exactly.
So, while we're
leaving a couple of these out, but it would still be building towards some of that, right?
Right. So in relation to the major scale, we're leaving out that 4 and that 7, right? So, and that's kind of why I took this approach. But when you look at it, when you see how easy these fingers fit, and I have these 2-note patterns right in the middle of the fretboard, right?
So... When you're thinking of, early us. Because that's the whole reason we like doing videos like this, by the way, guys, is we like making sure that you get to learn from our mistakes or the amount of time that we spent redoing something, right? So what would you say to younger you at this point in time on utilizing this, even if you don't want to be, if you don't want to go to college for guitar, or you just want to play and you just want to be able to play well?
Yeah, well, and that's where I think the pentatonic actually helps you a lot with that, right? Mm-hmm. Because these shapes are so easy to get under your fingers, and like up here in that next shape, like it's really easy to get those going. And so I think when you're just starting to learn to play solos and stuff, this is a really good place to start. It's also a great place for exercises. I've got a few that I do with my students that it's just you do ascending exercises like that.
I love that. Let's talk about a couple of exercises that are going to be really good for some of this, okay? Now, for me, I end up utilizing this as a tool for being able to connect shapes across the fretboard, because most of us learn it in a pattern like what you just saw. We start off and since we're staying in A minor, C major, we'll just kind of, starting here and kind of moving through. Everybody kind of starts off playing this, right? And it's kind of like, okay, that's cool, but like, isn't there something else we can do with this?
Right, and so the complaint I get a lot is once people know this, they're like, I've got, like, I can play in this box, all right? So the box is a good place to start. It gives you a framework, helps you, map out the fretboard and kind of chunk things.
Yeah, it's building a Lego with instructions, okay?
Yeah, but after you've built the instructions, now you want to build the giant spaceship.
So yeah, let's say you learned a couple of these because, whether or not you know this now, future you's going to know this, there's different places to play these same sounds. Cool. That's how the guitar is built, okay? Real simple, real easy. When you start doing this, what you start to get, I would say, is this understanding of how to move across this way. And I think a lot of us, when we're playing guitar and, early at guitar, we neglect being able to tie things together this way, because why would we? We're so, the internet is full of everybody going, play these shapes.
Yeah.
It's been like that for like 40 years, okay? Play these same shapes.
The shapes have a purpose.
And they have a purpose. They do. But there's also ways to add creative exercises to this to get the most out of your time. And I think that is one of the most important things for me, because I teach a lot of people who are busy.
Yeah, right? Same.
Same, yeah.
Yeah.
So I love stuff like this, right? Tying together these shapes where you're going. And then maybe.
Yeah. That's a nice little lick.
So what we're doing is we're kind of working on hammer-ons, pull-offs, vibratos, slide, all in with the pentatonic shapes. And I think that that's really important to maximize your ability to have a good practice routine, right? So for me, I like kind of introducing, as you saw, these shapes up here where you're doing maybe a hammer-on, pull-off idea, right? Moving down, adding on again, this idea, utilizing your fingers the correct way. And then you'll notice a little swap on that where you're still using that finger to kind of add those slides.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool, because this kind of plays into the scale shape that you just did. I added on a couple other spots, but what you'll end up noticing as you practice this is you're like, wow, that sound feels exactly like what I already heard.
Yeah. Right? And like I said, I think that's cool, because what you're doing now is, as you learn those boxes, now you're able to see how this one fits into a particular box. As you move down the fretboard, you can see how those boxes connect. The point of the boxes is not to know the box. Right. The point of the box is to help you to learn.
Don't get lost. Don't get lost in this wall that we built. You know what I mean? And I think that's a big thing, especially when you're in a creative field. Don't feel like you've isolated yourself to learning these things. What you have to think about this is, here's the tools. What are you going to build? And I think that is something that is, that's where we end up struggling. And that's where, you end up getting different artists that like different things, and learning, what you learn and how you learn becomes a bigger deal at that point in time. But it's really important to go, hey, so like, what do I do with this? And I've noticed that when I teach tying these things together this way, right, it introduces sounds that most people are used to hearing, but are like, wow, it didn't sound like just playing the scale, right?
Right.
Because now you're adding in all these extra things.
And you're making those leaps across one string.
Yeah.
Right? And so that tends to be a big complaint. It's like, oh, it just sounds like a scale. Well, try more slides. Try jumping from shape to shape, you know?
And obviously our job is different. Our job is to make this more fun for you, the person who said, I hate how this sounds like just a scale.
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing. So you can tweak it just a little bit, and you get this cool little flair. You get something different, and that's kind of the goal.
So let's jump in and let's do a practical application. John, why don't you take over first?
Oh my!
And I'll kind of jump in there in just a second. Okay.
Okay. So we'll start here. I'll probably start just right there in that first shape.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll go from there.
Oh my goodness. I love that demonstration. So a nice little blues lick, which is kind of what most people are going to be excited about. I mean, at least what I've seen. Obviously, it ranges from style and genre. We pick something where it's nice and slow, and the reason we do that is because it's really easy to jump in, and you can hear what we'll start talking about, at least later on, is something that's called phrasing. You'll notice one thing that was in particular when we were passing back and forth some examples was there was space to breathe.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So even when you're practicing it, right, like, don't forget to just try playing 4 notes. Just something really simple, just to, like, that's all it has to be. And it's a tiny little statement, and it gives you a sense of kind of what's going on, right?
Remember, there's so many artists, there's so many musicians who've done this before. Think about all of the things that you really enjoy and what you listen to, and try to find if it is just a blast of notes all the time. And I mean, even in a lot of the metal that I listen to, it's not relentless.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at. It could be fast, and it could be something that happens quite a bit and is a large amount of time, but there is going to be a point in there where there is not that happening. And so just make sure that when you're practicing, you include some of that. And I think that will give you a good head start to getting into better phrasing and better dynamics.
Fair enough.
Cool.
I like it.
Well, hopefully you found this Pentatonic video and their usage helpful in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Until next time, thanks for joining us.